We are live. Okay, so welcome to another installment of Power Chats with the Power of Girlhood. My name is Brenda Williams, and I'm the founder of the Power of Girlhood. And we're a leadership institute for girls between the ages of 8 and 18, and we want to support them through the process called girlhood. It's so important, especially right now during this pandemic season where a lot of social distancing practices are in play, and for good reason. But we still want to have conversations and make meaningful connections. And so we launched this series of Power Chats that you can tune into every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I feature and have a conversation with a different influencer in our community around topics that directly impact the lives of girls. So today, Ebony Bagley, who is not only a media personality, has also taken on the charge of cyberbullying. And if you're a parent and as a girl, you've been in situations, social situations in school where there may be an argument or conversation, gossip, rumors get started, and they don't just stay in the school space. They follow out into group chats. They continue on to Instagram. They're backhanded TikTok videos aimed at a particular individual, and it can really be um, so debilitating because it's not that bullying is anything new, but there has been a spike in suicide and harm as a result of being bullied. And many times, as a young lady, you may not feel that it'll help to tell an adult, or for you, the bully who may be tuning in, you may feel like you don't have a sense of power in some
Mhm.
other area of your life, that targeting other people or making sure that other people are intimidated by you gives you a false sense of security. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest. Ebony, how are you today?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, especially to talk about such an impactful issue. And right now, with so many of us, all of us home, this is a big issue. And I've been having so many parents contact me, while we've been quarantined, asking for advice. I've also had teachers contacting me because their students are getting into the same issues still now and they're quarantined.
Mm-hmm.
And even I had a call last week, which was super unfortunate, about a group of young ladies locally, here in Michigan. Were getting into it so much on social media, they actually decided to meet up and there was an altercation, and I had to get pulled into that whole situation. So it's definitely a big problem. It's a bigger problem right now because so many parents are juggling more than one thing. And so we're not able, even though we are all, many of us are at home, we're not plugged in as much at home because, once you're done working and you've been with the kids all day, you're not really as tapped in and tuned in. And so it's incumbent upon us to tap back in. We have to be so intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Now is the time to be so intentional and so mindful, as parents, as educators. So I'm so glad you have me on today. So, yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, we know that this is your area of expertise, and not just
Mm,
expertise, it's an area of passion.
it
So,
is.
what made you want to become an advocate for cyberbullying?
Yeah. So long story short, I always say, but it's really a long story, no. But
Mm-hmm.
I was a teacher for 7 years. I taught elementary and I also taught middle school, which is where I thrived. I love literature. I love teaching English. So I loved middle school teaching. And it was around so this was around the years we're talking, like I started teaching around 2007. And I stayed in the classroom until about 2015 is when I left. So I saw a lot change even in that space, right? So when I started teaching, like kids were kind of using social media, but then it was still more socially demographic. So when I was teaching in the
Mm-hmm.
inner city, it was less use at that time, less, and I had more of the issues coming from a suburban district where those kids were already real tapped into these social networks and worlds. But it was very vastly different when I started teaching in the inner city. I'm going to say that. However, when I left, it was totally different. So this is what I'm saying, and we all can kind of relate to this, how technology is kind of in taking over our lives, where it used to just be this thing we used on the side to now it's like your thing. It's your go-to. And so when I saw that change, I also saw the changes that happened in my students. I saw them distracted. And then I realized that they're not even tapped into this world, because this was around the time too. 2014 was when Trayvon Martin was happening. A lot of things were happening, and that was the year, my last year in the classroom. So I'm talking about these social things and tying them into literature at the same time. And it was hard for me to get my kids' attention, right? I had to figure out different ways. And I realized that they are literally living in such a virtual world now. They're not even in our real world. So it's up to parents, it's up to educators to be that balance and to bring them back into that real world. And there are ways that we can do that. First of all, let's be clear. If you're a parent, you're a teacher, you're in control. I think for some reason, like, we forget, and I hate to say the word control. I like to say that you are guiding them. You are bringing them guidance. I don't like to use the word control. I'm going to say you are the person that should be providing guidance. Okay. And if you have a foundation of respect, there should be no problem. And so, during these times, it's important that, first of all, we're setting up some boundaries. And that's the first thing. It's like the most basic thing, but it's something that kids and teens and et cetera, I see we just don't have. And a big reason why it's not had is because parents don't have it for themselves. So let's start from the basic and the foundation, I say. But before I jump too far ahead, I wanted to just jump back to when I was teaching. I noticed that world. And then I noticed too, when I talk to the parents and I'm trying to connect with the parents, that, oh, they're so into these virtual worlds too. We're dealing with a different kind of Peter. We're not dealing with like the parents I had. We're dealing with me. I'm a parent. I'm on social media too, right? So there's a big disconnect, right? And so when I thought about it, I first started out, I said, okay, let me just talk about cyberbullying. But then I realized, like, it's not even just about that. Like, it's really about overall wellness, because we're going to have to live with this. We're living with these devices. So how can we live with them in a way where we are still putting our wellness first, where we are still providing self-care? Because, we were raised with TVs, right? So our parents didn't let us just watch TV all day. You can't be on the phone all day. You can't be in these chat rooms all day. You can't be on message boards all day. I had to remove myself. I read something I didn't like last night. I had to remove myself from it, and so these are things that as parents and adults, we have to model that behavior for our kids. I don't want to get too far ahead, but I used to be a teacher, so that's why I got involved. That's where the passion came from.
Yeah, no, I can totally relate to that. And I think you really laid out some really contextual things for us to understand about how our generation, it was TV, this generation is social media, even with the parents playing into social media. I'm a former educator as well. I taught on secondary education. So definitely it was a constant battle, so much so that, if you took a phone from a student because they were being insubordinate, you would have parents that
Oh,
would be
yeah.
very upset, like, how dare you take their phone and you better not break it. And it's like, at what point do we draw the line in our culture, around the social media engagement and use? And I think there was been some studies with psychology that there is
Mm-hmm.
now a
Yeah.
FOMO, or fear of missing out, like that's a real
Mm-hmm.
thing.
It's a
And
real
now the
thing.
drama adds to um, the engagement because you want to see what happens next. And sadly, this isn't reality TV. These are real lives with real consequences. Um, and I'm sure, when you have the discussion with the young women that met up for the physical altercation, especially in this climate with police brutality, there is a whole other window that you're probably not
Mm-hmm.
even conscious of if the police see Black and brown bodies engaged in this activity. And of course, I love this. Well, we didn't tell anybody, or it was secret. You don't think that people just want to see more things happen, IP addresses, So if you can just kind of share
Yeah.
with some of the dangers too,
Mm-hmm.
that exist in the cyberspace. We know that human trafficking is
Oh, yeah.
also another component that happens a lot in the cyberspace. Well, how did you even meet? I met him, or what you think is a him. A
Mm-hmm.
17-year-old boy is somebody from, and I'm just using an arbitrary country like Bulgaria, just someplace distant.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can even share with us,
Yeah.
how that even happens.
Yeah. So, it happens because, a lot of times, people in young people's lives are not just tapped in. And sometimes it's a big reason why when I do my workshops, I teach parents about first how to use these devices and what's really going
Mhm.
on with them, because a lot of it is just like, Your parents, we might all be using the same phones, but we are not all using them the same. We might be using these devices and we're not all using them the same. And so, a lot of parents understand that, yeah, I'm on Facebook, so my kid is too. I'm on Instagram, my kid is too. But there are so many layers. There's all these private groups. A lot of it happens totally off of our grids. When I go into like these little investigations, or when I'm called into these different things, I find, and it's a learning thing for me, that Instagram has private groups where they're creating fake pages on fake pages. They're creating pages about other people where they're just saying the most hurtful and mean things. And right now, because so many kids have been home, it has been ridiculous. I mean, a lot of kids are putting themselves in Michigan, cyberbullying is a crime. So if you're feeling harassed by someone virtually, cyber, whether they're making a page, whether they're sending threatening messages, whether it's a old person contacting a young person, all of that is criminal right now. And so, all it takes is one phone call to your local police department, in any county in Michigan, and that can become a case. That's one thing. And then especially because right now it's not happening in the schools. So the schools don't even have to be involved right now. And that, in a way, I don't like to talk a lot about my schools, but that was a barrier because schools had their own rules and they were trying to discipline in that sect. But the reality is cyberbullying is such a serious thing, and the consequences, the after effects, the fact that it can destroy reputations, that it can destroy chances for getting into college, that it can destroy all of these things. It has to be taken extremely serious, just like we take plagiarism extremely serious. That's or any other little thing that's little. Cyberbullying is really a big deal, and I think that it's a matter of us, one, understanding the cases. I always say just do a Google search of local cyberbullying cases in your area. There's one case just happened recently in Michigan where two girls were going back and forth, and a girl ended up committing suicide. And so these are the harsh consequences that we are not thinking of. And a lot of times young people aren't thinking of it because they think it's just a game. They think it's just a joke. And we have to understand mentalities here. You can't expect a 15-year-old to understand that this is serious. So you have to make it serious for them, limiting screen time. If you have a kid, now listen, if you trust your kid, you don't have to be like overly paranoid. We know our children with sense, usually to a point. But if you have any concerns, that you might want to look into getting a spyware software, because you don't want your child to put themselves in a position where they are partaking in criminal activity. And, cyber bullies have no face. I've seen the most beautiful cyber bullies on earth. A lot of, we call them some quote unquote mean girls or whatever, but they're never, they're beautiful. Or I've seen like the most popular kids in school, it has no face. It has no look. There's not like the traditional bully, there's just not that anymore. That schoolyard bully, they look like all of us. And so we have to take that into account too. And I think sometimes because of that, because it's hard to say like, oh, this honor student, it almost like glamours teachers. I've seen parents go and report these things, and I went with parents and families to report these things. And the teachers are like, well, I had no idea she's such a wonderful student, or he's such a wonderful student. And they are wrecking havoc online. Literally, like,
listen,
the ringleaders.
There's no such thing as a good kid. I'm a good kid. I said there's no
right,
such
no
thing.
such thing.
Don't do it.
And what I'm finding is so many of these kids have multiple personalities online, and we know that adults are out of order online. So come on, you have the child psychology. We know where we are mentally at these ages, right? We know the choices we made at these ages. Let's be clear. And so you throw social media in, which most of them are not mentally prepared for. Okay, they're not, and it's too much. It's not like a TV where there's limited channels. It's limitless. It's limitless. If I want to find out about guns, I can go here. If I want to find out about what's happening right now, I can go see it live. These kids are
and then all according to a teenager, like all according this is the world according to people who don't have the frontal lobe, their frontal cortex is like fully developed. So you're giving misinformation based on, and it's fact because, well, on Instagram or wherever you're citing this as if it's a scholarly source.
And I feel like too, we have to understand the mental health component, which I think is just, I don't know where we need, this whole society's going to have to go through a work right now, like a lot of hard work, but we're not understanding too, when they're consuming all this, right? Just like we are, right? But we are adults, so we can kind of filter it out differently. Some of us can't even filter it out right now, right? So you put that, and then you have these kids trapped in these virtual worlds. I need you to understand they're literally in a different world than you. And that's what I have to teach parents. You got to pull them out. You have to start doing family activities and being intentional and reading and putting time limits on these devices. You have to really be intentional, because the reality is right now they're so overwhelmed that they can't process it all. And their mental health, I can't even imagine right now the state that it's in. And so a lot of these reactions we're seeing, the anger and the acting out, is because they're not having time to process everything that is happening. And there's been a lot, I get it now, and people want to talk about what's happening now, but the reality is our kids, our communities, it's been happening. Okay. This is it's like a boil, a pressure cooker is, that's where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been happening. And a lot of us, including you and myself, we've seen it. We've seen it. And when and I'm happy everyone else is seeing it, but it's almost like we're at it's like almost like a real bad place right now, where we have no way but to come back from this. It's almost like, I'm glad you all are realizing this, but it's been here. So I think mental health right now is really important. That's why I understand we can't all unplug totally, but we have to find those times to unplug. You have to have those conversations with your kids. You have to get in their business a little bit in 2020. And you
A
also
lot
have
of
to
it.
check yourself. And as parents, we have to check ourselves. You can't
Yes.
expect them to not be on their devices and not being snappy when you have this energy too. We all have to be mindful. And I know it's hard. But we all have to be super mindful. But as it
Because
relates to
this generation is, yeah, because this generation is more like a Y generation. It's like, that's
Mhm,
a backhand. I mean, my
mhm,
generation, we grew up, that's a backhanded, open hand smack to the mouth. But they very
exactly.
much are the I don't see you doing it, so therefore I don't have to do it. So it's not do as I say.
Mhm,
It's I'm gonna do as you do. So
mhm.
there is a lot of kind of cultural differences that
Oh
exist
yeah.
in this than before. But I love
And
what you said
us, we're
about
different.
spending time with you. We're very
Mhm,
different. Yeah, we're very different. But I also want to bring back the point that you made about family time and pulling students, especially our girls, because I just see that
mhm.
that's where the
Oh yeah.
epicenter of like a lot of the drama,
Mhm,
is, and a lot of times it's centered around a boy or
mhm. We know.
yeah, these very tumultuous, they're so serious. Like these
Mhm,
relationships,
mhm.
maybe like in 2 weeks, it's like 2 years.
Right. I
You
remember.
know?
I remember. I remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm,
Well, I was a bit awkward, so I was an ugly ducky. I didn't bloom until after until after school. So I have a whole different but to the point, pulling students out. And I think like, with our organization, we attempt to engage girls
mhm,
around like their identity, but there's so many other great organizations like Inside Out Literary Arts, which engages them in poetry, which I found, I've read some poetry that just brings me to tears of some of the things that, our students are dealing with, but just also sometimes the resilience to it. It's like you wonder, like, if you didn't have this tool of art or sports or an older, non-family member adult, like, where would these kids be? So if you can
mhm.
even speak to the
Yeah.
power of community, on
Mhm.
how the community can step in
Yeah,
and support our youth.
absolutely. I always start with myself. I could have easily went 1,000 different routes. And it was thanks to my mom keeping me busy. I was in band. That's the first thing. I was in band. I was in marching band. But my
Choir.
mom also sought out, a lot of those free community activities. I was in DAPSEP. No, I never wanted to be an engineer, but I was in that Detroit
Yep,
area
yep,
pre-college
yep,
engineering program. I went to
yep.
whatever my mom found free. This is how my mom was, because she was into like free stuff too. Whatever she found that was available. I went to U of M in the summers. I went to U of D Mercy in the summers. So having those outlets, I always had women pouring into me. My mom would ask her friends sometimes on the weekend if she knew her friend knew something that she didn't know. She'd be like, "Oh, go, Ebony, go hang out with her. Go shadow her."
Mm-hmm.
And so I had that kind of. I did have that a lot in my life, and so that is why, and when I didn't have it, I want to be that person for people right now, because there were times when I didn't have it. And so I think it's so important as parents that we're busy them up, keep them busy,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that you're working together, sitting down. One thing that I want to say too, that is going to tie this all together, is it's really important as families right now that we get back to building our relationship, resetting our relationships as families. And what I mean by that is a lot of us have gotten away from it because we were so busy. Here, tis is the season. Now is the time, and it's necessary. So really making sure you're creating your schedules together, that you're saying, deciding as a family, okay, how much screen time is too much. Decide these things as a family. It doesn't have to be, and so that it makes like everyone has ownership. I know, I'm on it too much
Mm-hmm.
too. Okay, so what can we do instead? Can we have game night? In my household right now, we try to have like theme nights because we all together. I mean, and we're still kind of socially distancing. So, we have game night, we have movie night, and we make it a big deal. We have
Mm-hmm.
barbecue nights, and just little things like that make a big difference. And before you know it, it's bedtime and no one's been on a device. Some of it is just mind control, just reworking your mind. You want to be outside. Your body does not want to be on these devices, right? You want to be outside. The weather's nice. Go outside, walk until you get tired, come on back home. So just replacing those times, and also being extremely intentional. And it's good for all of us, because that's what should bring us joy. Our families, and I get that it's hard for a lot of us. I mean, I'm kind of an introverted extrovert, so I love this time. Like, it's like my husband can't go to the gym. I'm like, yay. Also, but at any rate, I love this time though. And I also, now it is hard because I like to be by myself. So that's a challenge. But overall, I really am using this because look at us. Our whole lives, we've been busy, running, ripping and running. And so now's the time to really pour into your family, pour into your foundation, because it's going to take these families, what's happening in these households right now, to really get us into the future. The thoughts, the mental space, what's happening, all these conversations that are happening in these households, that's going to determine our future. What right now, because we're at that place. School's gone, all these things are gone. You're the teacher, mom and dad. You're the teacher.
Yeah.
And we got to all do better, including myself. I have to unplug my daughter last night. I was working, so I'm working from home. Pretty demanding job in addition to all my other things. And she said, Mom, you got to watch this movie with me. And she like took my phone. Like she took it because I was sending some email. She took it. And so sometimes, I respect it. But I think that the reason why she can do that is because we've had those conversations about what's too much. What can we do instead? We all want to be more tapped in.
Too much.
Mm-hmm. I was doing too much.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think just being intentional. And again, I have a lot of resources on my site. So if you ever have a question or anything specific, please reach out to me. I'm super available, super reachable. But yeah, being intentional.
Yeah. Yes, that is so important. So, Ebony, what is your what's your site so that we can make sure that we have our audience? So we've got quite a few people that have joined in. So I want to acknowledge Susan Davis and Melinda and Mike and Bria. So we've got so many people.
Because I don't know.
That are,
Okay.
Yeah, that have tuned in. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, but I keep it also in real time. Unfortunately, on my device, but it shows me that people have tapped in. So thank you, everyone. I'm telling everybody, thank you for tuning in. Yay! Tuning in. And what's your
Can you hear me?
What's your website so that I
can?
can?
Sorry. So yeah, Facebook. I just have a Facebook page. Internet safety for my internet wellness, and that's at facebook.com/EbsKnowsBest, which is spelled EBS at KNOWSBEST. And so that's my site on Facebook, where I just offer tips for internet wellness. You can also reach out to me on there. But yeah, this is just my passion project because I really wanted to do something, and I try to do something, and I'm also very passionate about us being outdoors. I'm also a Parks and Rec commissioner here in Oakland County, Michigan. So these are just things, everything that I do, I try to tie into my passions. So that's how I live my life. That's what we do over here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Be the change. Yep.
Be the change that we really want to see in the world, because I do feel like we're in a space and time where I think a lot of us are so hungry for leadership, like that magnitude leadership that we would see like in MLK or Malcolm X, like these people that galvanize. But I just really feel like in this season, it's going to be all of us. Like
it's going to be us. We're the ones.
Grandiose to come in, and I just think it's going to be everyday people.
Yeah, I think we're the ones. I mean,
so tag, you're it. You've got the book. You have these biographies.
Mm-hmm. We're the ones. I mean, we all can do something.
It's every single one of us. Yep. No, there's no white knight coming in.
Nope. We all
That's
can do
right.
something, and it's
That's right. We
incumbent
don't have to do
upon us
everything, but
too.
we can do something. And it's
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. So whether you have, biological children or not, for those of you who are under the sound of my voice, reach out to Ebony, reach out to myself to see how you can get involved because we're always looking for volunteers. We're always looking for guest speakers. This is a way it makes you really feel on the inside. It does. It makes you feel really good to know that you're pouring back into. And for many of us adults, I believe mental health is important. But it's also really healing to see a version of yourself. I can guarantee you, you will run into a young lady that's going to be like, "Oh, she is just like me." So you have an opportunity to go back and have a conversation with yourself, so that you can maybe make some different choices. So, Ebony, we are just so happy to have you. You just brought so much wisdom and knowledge, and I want people to get in touch with you. So please check out Ebony Bagley here on Facebook. She's a wealth of resources and opportunities. She also has a YouTube channel, so you
Oh
can check
yeah.
her out on YouTube as well. And we are here. Yep.
And Instagram too. You can
Got
follow me
you
on
got your
Instagram
Instagram.
too. You
She
can
has an
follow
amazing
me. Instagram
follow her on the gram.
yeah,
So for those of us who are, what is it one more time?
at Ebs Knows Best. I had a little delay. Sorry, guys. At Ebs Knows Best. So Instagram is the same as Facebook.
At Perfect, at Ebbs Knows Best. So this is a very important conversation. Of course, we couldn't dare try to put everything into 30 minutes. However, take this information, please repost this for people in your communities, other young ladies, so that they understand that they do have advocates, people that are there to support them, parents as well. We're communal, we're here, no judgment. We're just here to, support you in any way that we can. So tune in next week where we have the HBCU broker. So we're going to have Tiffany E. Brockington to come on and talk about how to navigate, especially in pandemic. How do you navigate the college application process and how do you get through that very interesting 2020, 2021 freshman year? You start out your
Imagine.
college in in a pandemic. Can you imagine? I can't even
No.
imagine. So for those of you, shout out to 2020 graduates, but now navigating this new space of what it's like, you know, um, going to school still under there's no known cure. So what is that going to look like for us on campuses in the fall? And so Ebony will be not Ebony, Tiffany will be here. Tiffany Brockington will to help support you navigating specifically the HBCU. So all my HBCU graduates and attendees love the work of HBCUs. And again, Ebony, we're so grateful to have you. And anytime this space is yours, please, know that you can always come on. We love you. The Power of Girlhood loves you and adores you. And thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye.
Absolutely. Bye, everyone. See you all next Tuesday at 11 a.m. All right. And